everybody. This is Dr. Lori Shemek.
And I'm Omar Cumberbatch. You're listening to This Podcast Burns Fat.
Hey, Lori, how are you today?
Hi, Omar. I'm doing great. I got in last night from Florida. My dad and saw my dad, my family. It was just incredible. It was really, when you see him once a year, extended family, it's like, yay.
No, yeah. No, and then it's definitely that time of year. So it's exciting to just have the holidays come around.
Right. And excited as well for Paul Salter to join us today. He is a coach. He's actually coached over 1,500 women to lose 20 pounds and keep it off. He has a formula called the 5% Way Sustainable Weight Loss. And, he talks about things like consistency, and we all know that, but he has a way of presenting it that is sustainable and people understand it and do it. Things like inaction is more costly than action, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is true, no matter how scary that action is. So it really was a pleasure to have him on. He's really funny too.
No, absolutely. And what a way to end the year. I mean, I know we've learned so much over the course of the year. This is going to be our last one for the year because it's got to give each of our guests an opportunity, especially to shine. And I know towards the end of the year, people are really just looking into just celebrating and whatnot. So we'll give the audience like 2 weeks to kind of digest this stuff.
Exactly.
No pun intended, right? And then, just kind of rock out to the new year.
Bang it out the beginning of the new year.
Absolutely. So let's jump into Paul.
Okay. Oh, and happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Hey, Paul. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
I am doing great. How are you two?
I'm doing great, and thank you for asking.
But
welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. Glad we're able to make this happen tonight.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Paul, you have a great story. I want you to just give the audience a little bit of an opportunity to get to know you a little bit better. Just kind of jump into your story a bit, and then we'll have some questions for you right after.
Sounds great. I think my journey really begins, which is kind of weird to say out loud, nearly 18 years ago at this point. But as a multi-sport athlete out in high school, I was a whopping 5'3", 110 pounds soaking wet going into my junior year of high school, and figured that I needed to do something to keep up with all of my peers who were bigger, stronger, and faster. I like to first give all of the credit in the world to my mom, who always made positive nutrition choices kind of our staple. But I started to recognize the more I paid attention to what I ate, the better I could do keeping up with my peers who were bigger, stronger, and faster. And that served me incredibly well for a couple of years. I took that nutrition knowledge with me to college and really started to recognize, oh, wow, I could maybe find a way to help people make better decisions to put on muscle, lose fat, perform at their best. And I had this idea planted in my mind that maybe I could work with athletes. That would be the coolest job in the world. I wasn't skilled enough to be a professional athlete. Why not take the second best opportunity and work with them? And that really set kind of my plan in motion when it came to declaring a degree and seeking out various internships and ultimately working closely with my counselor at the time in college. We made the decision to go the route to become a dietitian rather than just getting a degree in nutrition, which was a much more generalized degree at that time. And as someone who was on the registered dietitian track, I had to undergo 1,200 hours of supervised clinical practice to really garner what the board determined to be the most useful pieces of information and experience to be a credentialed registered dietitian. And, that was a path for me that was mandatory. But unfortunately, at the time, most registered dietitians just worked in hospitals, and I wanted to be as far away from a hospital as possible. Mm-hmm. So there was quite a conflict of interest there, but I did what I had to do. But simultaneously, sought out as many opportunities as I could to volunteer, to get internship experience, and to get my foot in the door within that sports nutrition circle. So I was fortunate enough to have various internships working with the football team at the University of North Carolina, preparing prospective NFL athletes for the NFL Combine so they had a chance to get drafted higher that particular year. And upon entering my dietetic internship, I was very much exposed to an entirely different side of nutrition, working closely with those on the brink of bariatric weight loss surgery. And to me, this was my first exposure to how profound of a role someone's emotions played in their eating behaviors. It was the first exposure to how deep the psychological roots ran when it came to examining someone's relationship with food. And although I still went the route of sports nutrition and had the opportunity to work with collegiate, professional, and Olympic athletes for a couple of years, it was really interesting in hindsight to see how that particular experience in my internship came full circle. Because for me, I loved what I did working with athletes, but I did not love working 75-hour weeks. I also wanted to have a life. And it was at the time I left that previous job and started working one-on-one with people as a nutrition coach, as a dietitian, that I started to really fall back onto that knowledge of the role, someone's emotional awareness and management played in shaping their eating behaviors, how someone's self-talk and their belief systems really shaped how they chose to eat, how they chose to exercise, and how they chose to take care of themselves. And this all comes full circle together now, where the past few years I've spent significant time really working with those stuck in the yo-yo diet cycle with decades of experience hopping from one diet to the next, uncover the story they've been telling themselves for years, for decades, helping them to rebuild the most important relationship of all, and that's the one with themselves, so that they can truly feel empowered and in control of feeling, looking, and being their best self.
So, Paul, that is incredible. And that's I love the way you were that aware of what was going on and remembered it, right? Because it led you to not only being a registered dietitian, but the author of The Secret to Sustainable Weight Loss. And you also are the podcast co-host of The 5% Way. And so congrats to you on those as well. But, there's something that I find really interesting about what you talk about, and it's about the sustainability of weight loss. Why isn't weight loss sustainable?
That is a fantastic loaded question. I think at first, as much as I believe in taking ownership of all of our results and circumstances, finding a way to take that ownership as a sense of empowerment, I've really come to the belief that the diet industry has set everybody up for failure when it comes to sustainable weight loss, simply because, they are experts at human behavior, human buying psychology, human transformation psychology, and they sell and promote these quick fix, restrictive fad diet plans that generate a massive hit of dopamine alongside very rapid results. And ultimately, they know and we know that those results are not sustainable because of the behavior changes that are asked of said person to achieve those results. And inevitably what happens is that person takes the unsustainable approach. They return to the only foundation they know, which is the set of eating behaviors that got them into that position of being unhappy, unhealthy, overweight in the first place. So they regain all of the weight and they remember, 3, 6, 9 months later, oh yes, diet plan A, B, and C helped me. I'm going to go buy it again. So the diet industry has set up this beautiful cycle to continuously collect recurring revenue without ever prioritizing the well-being of their customers. But going even deeper than that, most people have a very, at least basic and, enough information about what it means to make healthy decisions, not so healthy decisions, what an appropriate portion size is, and what we like to call eating like an asshole is. And what really happens is we get in our own way. We
Mhm.
are our biggest obstacle. And that truly is rooted in, our relationship with food and our relationship with ourselves. I'm a really big believer that if we can really fall in love with ourselves again and begin to care for ourselves, our brain is hardwired to help put opportunities in front of us to make us feel even better when we consciously choose to feel good, which ultimately helps the eating behaviors and the exercise habits we so desperately try to cultivate actually become much easier to fall into place.
Yeah, and you guys, if you want to really see an underscore of what he just said, go to his latest Instagram post. What are you? Just Paul Salter, right, on Instagram?
Paul Salter Coaching.
Coaching. Okay, yeah. It's great. And I loved what you did with that. And you show in a very fun way, a funny way, the myriad of excuses people have for not losing weight. So,
yes, I appreciate you mentioning that. Thank you.
Sure.
So, Paul, one of the things that it seems is your main, I would say your main, but one of the first goals that you would do is to have a person who may not be feeling too great about themselves, maybe the way they look, the way they fit into clothes, et cetera, feel better about themselves. That's a big thing to do. So how do you go about doing that?
It seems so simple, but as you're kind of alluding to it, it's not easy whatsoever because most people I work with come in wanting to lose weight yesterday, that they're so overly focused on the number on the scale. It almost seems like a foreign concept to slow down and think, oh wait, like I do want to feel better too. I do want to cultivate this massive amount of self-love. So, I found it to really be a two-part approach to helping someone realize that. And from a nutrition perspective, stage one is really helping each individual rebuild their foundational eating habits and their relationship with food while putting them in a position to maintain their current weight, not immediately go into a deficit to lose weight. And the reason that's so important is because when we are literally in a calorie deficit, that's a tremendous psychological, physiological, and emotional stressor. So when we choose to rebuild a foundation of eating habits that allows them to thrive rather than just merely survive, we free up so much emotional and mental energy that they can now appropriately allocate to looking inward, doing the self-care, the self-love to begin cultivating the feelings that they desire and begin taking conscious steps every single day to feel them.
And so I guess a lot of people, what they're lacking is that actual caring about themselves. Wouldn't you say it's more like, I think when people start eating junk and they know what foods aren't healthy and what foods are healthy for the most part, it's just this lack of caring about themselves.
It really is. And I think too, we're not taught anything about like goal setting in our, in our elementary, secondary, high school studies. But what we are taught is that our worth is tied to a number on the scale, to the size of a clothing item we wear, or to how we look based on social media and societal standards. But behind all of those surface level, kind of, more or less BS goals, it's really just a collection of feelings. So something that we also prioritize, in what we do is we help people get really clear on how they want to feel. Because if we can get really clear on how we want to feel, this allows us to quickly reverse engineer an appropriate amount or a list of appropriate action steps to start bringing those feelings into their life now. And the mistake so many people make, and again, I hate to place all the blame on the diet industry, is that they delay feeling good, confident, sexy, strong, healthy, energetic until they lose the weight or they fit into size X, Y, and Z. But instead, we like to take this kind of reverse inside out approach and help them feel that way now, give them permission to reinforce and support that they deserve to feel how they desire. And as we mentioned earlier, the nutrition, the exercise behaviors they desire to begin to fall into place at a much easier rate.
So what's interesting is we have a lot of guests on the show who experience this whenever they have a client or someone who they're trying to help lose weight. Like, what about that person who wants to get into a dress for that wedding in a month and a half? How do you address that by having like that kind of perspective that they might not see the results on the scale immediately when they're trying to do that?
Yeah, it takes candid communication from day one. I'll be the first to say. And after let's say this individual, for instance, has completed what I like to call the most thorough nutrition questionnaire they've ever seen in their lives when they work with us, and I collect all that information. I'm going to outline a plan for them. So I'm going to give them a detailed overview of what the next 6 months look like, starting with what the goal is in 6 months, reverse engineering our priorities every step of the way, so that first and foremost they are clear on the why, which gives them a sense of both ownership and empowerment every step of the way. So if her wedding is in 6 weeks, for example, I'm going to outline realistic expectations while also helping provide support and clarifying exactly how they want to feel on that day, and B, helping to move their eyes, energy, and attention to the myriad of additional areas of progress that are taking place by them committing to strong consistency in the self-care, nutrition, and exercise department. And hopefully, I can help them see that we're going to do our very best to help you feel, look, and be your best on your wedding day. But we also very much care that you feel, look, and be your best 6 months from now and 6 years from now.
And presently.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well said. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. So you talk about becoming your own investigator to help you look, feel, and be your best. And I was wondering if you could expand on that a little more.
Happily, yes. So self-awareness is such a powerful gift and a curse, if you will, because it's this weird slope or trajectory of growth where you start becoming aware of the reasons you feel or act a certain way, and all of a sudden you become so aware that you're overwhelmed with information that it can be very paralyzing, crippling, if you will, and lead to absolutely zero action for a period of time. But ultimately, what we really encourage people to do is to explore, the origin of their self-sabotaging behaviors with compassionate curiosity, absolutely free of judgment. And where I really like to kind of nudge people's attention and awareness when they're doing this reflection, sitting outside by themselves, journaling, meditating, however they choose to approach it, is to start really reflecting judgment-free on their childhood. How was food talked about? How was weight, health, and exercise spoken about? Because we are so malleable, particularly from the ages of 0 to 7, when roughly 90 to 95% of our belief system is formed, that we carry a lot of those self-sabotaging behavior seeds with us into adulthood. But by looking inward and looking backward in time, it gives us an opportunity to better understand why that behavior exists, and then creates an opportunity to potentially forgive it before ultimately recognizing it no longer serves us, so we can then begin the process of unlearning it and replacing it with a behavior that truly meets our needs and helps us be the best version of ourselves.
So, Paul, I'm gonna get in trouble with this question, but I
Uh-oh.
see, I see that, I guess, large percent of your clientele is female. So, what's up with the guys? And is there a reason that we're excluded? I think I know the answer, but I'd like to get you in trouble with that.
Yeah, I'm happy to be there. No, it's a great question. I'll say, one thing I guess I should have probably included when I was telling more about my background is I've had the privilege of working one-on-one personally with more than 1,500 men and women over the years, collectively helping them lose tens of thousands of pounds. And for a while, I was a coach and consultant for a company called Renaissance Periodization, and I had absolutely no role in the marketing. And I had just started to find 90% of those who signed up with me were women. And, as someone who is very much a learner and student of my craft, I really took it upon myself to go above beyond to really be as empathetic and understandable and to find points of relatability with women, to the point where, men and women share very similar struggles. However, and let me just be very clear, this is a bit of a gross generalization, but to answer this question, the modalities and the methods that I use to coach, teach, and hold accountable just started to really gravitate towards women, because that's all I did every day for 10 plus years. That I wanted to ensure, when I made the decision almost 2 years ago to create a community model, knowing that we go very deep from an emotional perspective, that I could create the safest, safest space possible for people to feel vulnerable and courageous to share their chaos, their challenges, their struggles. And the way that it evolved was that, the sanctity and culture of our community just truly blossomed, keeping it women only. And this is something, I've interviewed multiple members, non-members before, and just felt in the heart of hearts the best decision to really serve these women to help them reach their full potential.
Well, I mean, I definitely hear where you're coming from. 90% of my clients are female as well. But I think that's what's interesting, too, is just the way that we can communicate with, say, the ladies as opposed to the guys. So one of the things while this interview's been, that as a guy, as a guy specifically, I'm really interested in X's and O's of like, what do I have to do? What do I have to eat? What do I gotta, how many hours do I have to spend at the gym? I'm very much in that kind of mind frame, just being a guy. Can you at least go into that specifically with the lady listeners of the audience today? Because I think a lot of our audience, right, Lori, are interested in like the next steps as far as diet and possibly exercise or supplementation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to make sure, let me repeat back to you to understand. I am certain what you're asking. Like I heard you 100%. Like the nutritional X's and O's, yes, particularly with the male population. Just tell me exactly what to do, how many to do, when to do it. I'm done. You'd like me to elaborate more on that? Is that correct?
Yeah, that and we do have people who are in the audience as females, of course, who are interested in that part of this equation as well. Because I think it's definitely they would look for a plan of action as well.
Wouldn't it
Absolutely.
be customized though? I mean, I'm sure it would be customized.
You're spot on. So, in what we do in the 5% community, priority number one is working closely with our newest members to build them out an individualized nutrition blueprint. And the 3 boxes that we check from day one during this collective process is the final tangible product has to be individualized, has to be simple, and it has to be flexible. So obviously that is incredibly tailored to that person. I like to say that their DNA is truly tattooed on their plan. But, I've spent extensive time working with the male population, and I'll hit on that for just a moment before bringing it full circle. And again, a bit of a generalization, but maybe I'm speaking just for myself. At times, I found that the male population tends to be a bit more hesitant or slow to ask for help, or a little bit more stubborn. More often than not, we like to think we can do it all ourselves, and we like to repress our emotions. Again, a bit more of a generalization. So when I am here, for example, on Instagram or on this wonderful podcast talking about, going deep into exploring our emotions, not everybody is as open to receive or dig deep into that information. But as we circle back to the nutritional X's and O's, when it comes to putting a plan together, regardless of working with a woman or working with a man, everything has got to be tailored to their lifestyle and, most importantly, their preferences. I've seen time and time again where people continue to outsource their nutrition to fad diet or so-called coach A, B, and C. They feel like the only way to lose weight, for example, is to eat 6 times per day. And they drive themselves freaking crazy, spending hours in the kitchen or constantly chowing down, bland chicken breast. And it's like, hey, what if you only ate 3 times per day? Would that be more in alignment with your preference and your schedule? And they're like, oh my goodness, it absolutely would. So there's really just a level of getting to just know the person, one human to another, to see how you can work to build that foundation that is unique to him or her.
That's really great. Yeah. Because, a lot of people, they think that you have to spend hours in the kitchen trying to, food prep or whatever, when in fact, really, there are some very handy hacks and ways you can, or even fasting is one way, to cut down on the chaos, if you will. That was a bad word, but anyway. So what are some of the common mistakes you see clients making?
Specific to weight loss, or
yes, to weight loss. Sorry. Yeah,
absolutely. Just wanted to clarify. And I mean, the first one is we want results yesterday. Right. Like let's just understand our patience in this day and age is at an all-time low, unfortunately. But I
That's a
think
great
where
point. Yeah.
it just we want them yesterday. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, we're willing to do whatever it takes when someone promises us we can have those results yesterday. But also too is we don't do a good job of looking into the future, because as a human being, we are incredibly gritty. We are incredibly resilient. We can do anything we put our minds to that is emotionally charged with a powerful why for 30, 60, 90 days. But what about day 91 and beyond? And the problem people run into is that, again, they can follow that restrictive 1,200 calorie meal plan for 30, 60, or 90 days, but inevitably, you're always going to regress, specifically during periods of stress or burnout, to what you originally know to be your foundation. And again, goes back to those are the foundational eating habits that got you into a position of being overweight, unhappy, and unhealthy in the first place. And then the last one I'll add, and this one is a bit more nuanced because every individual is different, but as a whole, I have personally observed far too many people cutting out their carbohydrates way too quickly during the dieting
Yeah,
process. And
exactly.
as carbohydrates are our primary fuel source for our muscles, our heart, our nervous system, our brain. And that just leads to being cranky, being hangry, and not a pleasant person to be around. So we very much try to take a fat first approach, is what we call it, when it comes to a dieting phase, and try to keep carbohydrates as high as possible for as long as possible, not only from an energy perspective, but just a well-being and happiness perspective as well.
So, Paul, to that point, is there anything that you say that a person should not be eating specifically? It could be macro or just like I'm almost alluding to sugar and stuff like that. That might be common detrimental ideas to the health overall and weight loss.
That's a great question. We certainly, and I certainly take anything goes kind of there. I'm never going to tell you what to eat. I'm never going to build you a restrictive plan, but I'm going to provide you plenty of education, proof, and examples as to why choosing nutrient dense foods are your best option, and doing so consistently is obviously the best approach to take. The one food, if you will, that maybe we should really consider putting a temporary pause on during a diet phase is if someone has explicitly communicated that they have a food that they just absolutely cannot control themselves around. That's a separate beast that will do a lot of emotional work to unpack and go through an entire behavior change process. But it's maybe something that we want to put a pause on revisiting at a later time when we're not in a calorie deficit. But then it comes back, like we could go down the rabbit hole with eating sugar, eating artificial sweeteners, and we can go in the direction of, as long as the calorie balance is in the way we want it to, everything's going to shape up. And I agree with that to a point, but I also like to say, if you eat nothing but processed foods that are just absolutely rich in whether it's artificial sugars, tons of sugar, like just ask yourself how you feel. Like you're not going to feel your best. You're going to be lethargic. You're going to be battling a roller coaster of appetite and energy levels. So ultimately it goes back to, how do you wish to feel?
Oh, I love that. Yeah. How do you wish to feel? And I choose to do this. So, instead of I have to do this, I choose to do this. Those are two of my favorites. So a lot of people snack. They snack a lot, and they snack after dinner, and they snack late into the night. So how can they stop that?
So this might be an interesting take. I'm curious to see how your audience receives it. So I try to stop labeling every time we eat as a meal or a snack. Now, I know that might sound very, very simplistic, but my reason for this is that when we start labeling, meals versus snacks, people start to pigeonhole themselves like, oh my gosh, it's 3 o'clock. I can't dare eat that. I guess I have to gravitate towards the bowl of candy over here. Or, oh my gosh, it's 6 a.m. I can't eat that. And what it does is it just like limits opportunities, again, only in their mind about what they can and can have. And that just kind of is like a self-fulfilling prophecy of different food rules and restrictive behaviors that doesn't really empower them to feel a sense of control every step of the way. However, to specifically address your question, which is a fantastic question, is one of the best things somebody can do is always make both protein and fluid a priority every single time they eat, whether 6 a.m., 12 p.m., or 6 p.m. If every time you eat, there is an adequate source, an adequate amount of protein, you're going to go a long way in helping to promote satiety and slow down digestion. And then second to that, having 12 to 16 ounces of fluid either before or right after a meal is just an extra little way to send satiety signals to your brain to help you better manage your appetite. And I think one other point worth adding, because it's, getting late over here and I'm kind of thinking like, an evening snack does sound nice. If you're somebody who constantly finds yourself eating late into the evening, there's probably 3 things to examine. Number 1, you're not eating enough during the day. So that's something to look into. Number 2, it's very much emotionally fueled. So you need to take a hard look at what emotion is driving that behavior. Or number 3, maybe you just like to eat at night and you should shift the structure of your individualized nutrition plan to account for that. Build it in so you don't feel like you're breaking some arbitrary rule.
I love it.
That was very, very well said. So, Paul, I think to kind of wrap up, I know you touched on the emotional aspects of getting into a weight loss state, the X's and O's as far as nutrition. Can you talk briefly about just the exercise component and any other things that you might help our audience in the weight loss arena?
Absolutely. I think the 2 messages for everyone listening right now, I'd love for you to take home from an exercise standpoint. Number 1 is less is more. Like I still hear and read these stories about people doing, 2-a-days and extra cardio here and there. And it just really at some point crosses the threshold of becoming counterproductive. So I think that's really important to recognize, and it becomes even more important as we age. Like if you can afford, time-wise to get 3 high quality workouts in per week, that's fantastic. Celebrate that. You don't need to do 7 or 12. 3 will go a long way in helping you to feel your best, have energy, and lose the weight you desire if that's your goal. And then second,
I was just going to say, just to underscore what you're talking about, research is coming forward more and more now, showing that less is more in many cases.
Yes,
that even
absolutely.
5 minutes of exercise, is excellent for health. So.
It really is. That's a great
interrupt.
Point. No, not at all. And I think second to that is choose a form of exercise you enjoy. That's the one you're most likely to do. Like if you don't like CrossFit, stop trying to force yourself to a CrossFit gym. If you don't like whatever else exercise modality is out there and you love another one, do that one. And of course, I will preface that by saying, like, I think a minimum of 2 resistance training sessions per week, and that looks very different, but just some form of resistance training, especially as we begin to age, is absolutely vital to your longevity, health, quality of life. But otherwise, if you like yoga, do yoga. If you like to walk, don't write off walking. Walking is so darn good physically, mentally, and emotionally, but find something you enjoy because that's the one you're most likely to do consistently.
Mm-hmm. No, amen. So, Paul, you were fantastic today. Can you do us a favor and leave us all the information we can continuously see what you're doing, the websites, social media handles, anything that we can do to keep up with all the good thing you're doing out there?
Yes, gladly. But the first thing I want to say is I just appreciate the fantastic questions. I mean, you guys it's so refreshing to hear these just thoughtful questions. So thank you to both of you. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed this conversation.
So much. Very kind.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely. But yes, the best way to connect with me is on Instagram at Paul Salter Coaching. I'm on there daily. It's just, this is who I am on this show is who you're going to find on Instagram. It's the same guy you're going to find working in our community in one-on-one coaching. That's the best place to say hi, learn more about me, get some great photos of my dog, of course, but also see what it is and who I am and what I'm about.
I love that. Yeah. And I love your Instagram. It's wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, definitely appreciate you joining us today and dropping so much knowledge on our audience, and have a great rest of the night.
Yeah, thank you,
Take care,
both,
Paul.
You as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of This Podcast Burns Fat. We're so excited to have you as a listener, and we're hoping that you've really enjoyed the content as well. And if you did, please run over to iTunes and provide a rating and or review. It will go a long way in helping us continuously build our listenership up so that we can provide you with excellent content regarding fat loss, weight management, and just an overall healthy lifestyle. Thanks so much. Have a great night.